Hey everybody, it's Jeff Pollard at Jeff Pollard 11 on Instagram and solarpowertothepeople.org. I'm here with Mike Garcia. And Mike, I thank you for coming. I wish for you to just tell me a little bit of EnviroscapeLA.com. Tell me about permaculture. Tell me about native plants, the importance of it. Tell me the importance of how we can get all our, plant our own foods, all that. Pick our brain, man. Spill it.
Did,
Thanks.
did you did you say we have several hours?
No. All the nutshell answers.
Okay, but we'll give you the Clip Notes version of it.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I've been a landscape contractor for about 40 years. Actually, I was born and raised in Redondo Beach. Actually, my grandparents moved to Redondo Beach in 1920. No, excuse me, 1912. So before World War One. My grandparents immigrated. The reason they chose Redondo Beach is because Redondo Beach back then was known as good farmland, and they were farmers. And so thankfully they stopped here instead of Fresno. And then my mom was born here in 1920. I was born here in 1960. So yeah, it seems like I'm not a farmer per se like they were, but I do grow things. I mean, my degree is in ornamental horticulture. Then back in the old days, I was actually doing conventional landscape, front and backyards. Did that for a long time and started noticing that I got better results when I partnered with nature. Back then, this was the late 70s, early 80s. Everybody was spraying Roundup because we were told by the Monsanto reps, hey, it's just as harmless as water. It only kills plants. And you're told that by your teachers in school, and you're thinking, okay, well, Roundup isn't so bad. Well, fast forward 40 years later, we know the truth finally comes out. So what I've noticed is that I started getting into permaculture. This must have been about 20 years ago. Started dabbling in it, composting and so on, native plants. And then I kind of began to see that there's a correlation between the bugs, the microorganisms, the soil, the air we breathe, the food we drink, and everything's a circle. And there's a great book called Braiding Sweetgrass, talks about how indigenous peoples had the same view. No matter how technologically advanced we get, we go to moon, we go to Mars, there's still a formula for success, for humans anyway, of success living on life. There's something called biodiversity. We can't ignore the biodiversity, and that's a big word. What it means is the different life forms that are on the planet. In other words, if one disappears, it's going to have a huge impact on the whole ecosystem. It's been said that
culture comes in.
Yeah.
And could you give us a quick definition of permaculture, a simplified version?
Permaculture, I would say permaculture is partnering with nature, and it has three foundations upon which it's built. It's people care, earth care, and future care, meaning the future, leaving the planet in a better place than you got it for future generations, or taking it for the kids. So that's the very basic essence of it. But partnering with nature. So what does that mean? You can partner with big chemical companies, and again, we've seen the results of that happening, and the results they're okay, but we could do much, much better. After World War II, soldiers were coming back from World War II, were told, hey, don't worry about a thing. The chemical companies are saying, we've got you handled. We'll grow way more food. So go into the city and, get a city job. Don't worry about the farm. So we entrusted our food supply to chemical companies, and we ended up with things like GMO and Roundup and, organophosphates, and it goes on and on and on. We realized that there's a big shift that's happening now. I remember as a kid back in the 60s and 70s, everybody smoked. And then I thought, wow, nothing will ever change that, because the smoking companies were just billions of dollars back then. How do you fight that? Well, how do you know somebody in LA is from out of town? Because they smoke. Because, in California, people just don't smoke anymore. Same thing with fast food versus real food. It seems like people are opting more for real food instead of the junk food, fast food. The best food that you can consume is the food that you grow. If you're a locavore, meaning you grow locally, you consume it. Healthy bodies only come from healthy food. Healthy food only comes from healthy soil, and healthy soil is something only you can control. And by partnering with nature, you can do that. And what do I mean by this partnering with nature? Well, take fertilizer, for example. Fertilizer is, you have a handful of soil. You have enough fertilizer in that soil to fertilize an acre of tomatoes. So why do people throw fertilizer on? It's because the fertilizer companies want you to buy fertilizer because that's how they make their living. but what it is you don't need fertilizer. You need the stuff, the microorganisms that break down the fertilizer, the bacteria, the fungi, the nematodes, the protozoa, the cocci, the bacteria. So this permaculture is a whole return to the rewilding of humans, and looking at your backyard as your medicine cabinet, looking at your backyard as your grocery store. It's less wear and tear on the environment when you grow your own.
And this is where EnviroscapeLA comes in, right?
Correct.
Can you tell us a little about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what happens is I would say 15 years ago, I went to a Tony Robbins event, of all things, and I was, Tony said, "Hey, you know what? Pay attention to your diet. Pay attention to what's going on in the animal world, how much animals, how many animals you meet." And then fast forward 15 years later, there's like meatless Mondays, and their doctors are saying, "Yeah, I eat less meat." It's because a lot of the pharmaceuticals are pumped into meat that people eat these days. So back then, I tried it, and I started eating a lot more fresh food and started noticing energy increases and weight loss and so on. And I thought, wow, why would I ever go back to the old way of thinking, my old lifestyle? So I decided, what could I do to make a difference? I know I landscape, but is there a way for me to landscape in such a way that could contribute to people's lifestyles? And one of the problems that I had at first was like, how do you make food look beautiful? And I mean, if I get 10 fruit trees and I plant them in a line in your front yard, there's, it's pretty, but it doesn't have the wow factor. So how do you create the wow factor in foodscaping, fruit trees and so on? Yeah, there is a way to do it, but it takes trial and error. You've got to add pollinator plants, you got to add natives, and you want to bring the wildlife into, I don't mean coyotes and stuff, but I mean the wild, the lizards, the birds, the butterflies. You want to create habitat for them. As a society, we've actually chased out the little critters. You take New York, for example. It's like miles of concrete, but it takes hundreds of thousands of miles to grow the food, the infrastructure to support a big place like New York or even Los Angeles. So and it seems like most people are congregated in cities. And so is there anything that city folk can do? Well, number one, it's by your food choices, support your local farmers. Number two, grow your own. We need to see a resurgence of things like the monarch butterflies, whose population has been decimated by 90% in the last 20 years. And if bees disappear, they're the canary in the coal mine. If the bees disappear, they're going to take us with them. About 80 to 90% of the food in the supermarkets are a direct result of bees. So we need to start rethinking that. If we don't, it's sad that there are orchards here in California that actually beekeepers are actually renting beehives out, mobile beehives, because there's just not enough bees. When I was a kid, I remember driving across town, to San Fernando Valley and back, and then coming back, you'd have to wipe your windshield off because of all the bugs that were splattered on it. Now we just don't see that. When I was a kid here in Redondo Beach, I remember there were frogs, and those are the first canary in the coal mine, and they're extremely susceptible to chemicals, and they're not around. Whenever it rained, I remember there were hundreds of frogs that come out. Nowhere to be
Really?
found for years
Yeah.
in Redondo Beach. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. No, I've never witnessed that set. Well,
Yeah.
so what is the first step for some? Let's just say there's for the audience that there's somebody that just doesn't know where to begin. Where can they start? Whether it's a thought, a direction, what do you think?
Okay, well, I'm going to direct you to all the free stuff that there is. I would go online. There's a gentleman by the name of Matt Powers. He has a course called the Advanced Permaculture Student course, and you can actually get a certificate in it. Now, the certificate will cost you money, but you can go on there, and he has probably hundreds of videos out there on YouTube and Instagram. Matt Powers, just Google that, Matt Powers Permaculture. And you'll find, in fact, he has free books, online books that will teach you the simplicity of how to start or where to begin. Somebody had to organize it. And so Matt, his story was, he was a rock and roller. He was literally, it was a rock star and in a band. And then his wife got sick with cancer, so he became a teacher to get more structure in his life. And then he found out about permaculture and the power of food to heal. So it kind of morphed into this permaculture school, and he has the #1 course online. That's who I got my permaculture certification through. And there's also, there's YouTube, there's Matt Powers. There's also just a plethora of books out there. But what I like about Matt's course, because you can get really deep into it, the site that you can get into, like learning about mycorrhizal fungi. I mean, but you can go so deep. Or I like to keep it simple for beginners. So I would definitely recommend Matt's courses. He has a gift to be able to simplify the unsimplified.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, what I'm gathering, it is just so crucial to, I mean, the only person you can trust is yourself when it comes to, like, so why not grow your own foods, right? You don't have to question where it came from. So that would be like one big ticket to kind of grow your own foods in your own yard if you have the space. Then it just sounds like, we need to bring back a bunch of critters of all shapes and sizes. What better way but with native plants, right? Native animals, native plants, that sounds kind of go hand in hand and all that. Then I like that. So we gotta visit this Matt Powers guy. He sounds like an interesting cat. And then is there anything else that you would like to kind of end it with in terms of?
Yeah, so native plants are really the juice of, because yesterday I was at a food forest we created a while back, and I did an Instagram video on it. My Instagram is EnviroscapeLA. And so I did about a 12-minute video while we were there. It was a food forest we created. And interesting thing, this lady had somebody put a chicken wire across, just basically she didn't want any rats or nothing to get in. The pollinators couldn't get in. And so she said her tomatoes, no tomatoes, nothing to pollinate them. So we cut away a lot of the chicken wire, and now it's starting to resume. So that's what I'm saying is do an experiment at how important are the pollinators. They're extremely important. So we should be creating food forest for people, but also food forest for the pollinators. And the way you bring the most amount of pollinators in is through native plants. There's a great book called Bringing Nature Home. It's by a professor. It's on the East Coast, but he makes an excellent argument about native plants and why they're so important. Now, one caveat though, native plants, they look great right now. If you go to a nursery and like a native plant nursery, everything's blooming, it's spectacular. They last about 2 months and then they look dead for the rest of the year. So you've got to mix in natives with what I would call near natives, which means it's a plant or a California friendly plant, a plant that is drought tolerant and it'll attract natives. Nothing attracts natives nothing attracts pollinators like natives. Give an example, ginkgo biloba tree, they use it a lot in modern contemporary, home landscapes. It'll attract 4 different types of pollinators. A California oak, like a live oak, it'll attract over 500 pollinators. And the reason why the pollinators are so important is because they're baby food. They have caterpillars, birds, they bring those caterpillars for baby birds. Baby birds can't digest the seeds. So it's extremely important that we feed the ecosystem. If we don't, then nobody else is going to. And we're just bombarding. A great book out there too, I want to recommend, Kiss the Ground. It'll scare the daylights out of you when you find out how much pesticide and herbicides are being sprayed in cities, not just in farms, but in cities too. This is serious business. That's why I said, I don't look at what I do as a business anymore. I look at it as, I get up every day and like, what can I do to promote, to save the planet of people?
Exactly.
Very, very, if we get on board with this.
Perfect. Well, thank you. You gave us so much information. I appreciate it.
Oh, I wish we had a couple more hours, but
We'll have to do an extended one time.
you got
Thank
it.
you so much.
Okay, Jeff, thanks for connecting. We'll see you next month.
All right.